The National Theatre has been so instrumental in the development of movement direction. The work of the movement director is to navigate the embodiment process for the actor, with the actor. Navigating the physical life and space between what's happening on stage in the actor's work and what's happening in the body of the audience. Laurence Olivier himself took his route into character through a physical journey. As artistic director in the early years of the National Theatre, he was instrumental in advocating and making sure that movement had a place on production. Thinking about the lineages of movement direction, I suppose the 20th century saw a real seismic shift in how we were thinking about movement, but also how we were thinking about the body. And what we've got is a really kind of dynamic crisscrossing of practices coming from Europe, from America, going back and forth. A wave of innovation was coming from Central Europe, Austria, Germany, Switzerland. In dance terms, this has been labelled as the new expressive dance, Ausdruck dance. One of the key proponents of Ausdruck dance was Rudolf Laban, who arrived in Britain in 1938. There had been some schools established in London, notably, and his work was being taught. His presence, however, brought a sort of new energy to it, and the development of the British schools out of Laban's analysis and movement permeated post-war British movement culture. Significant people emerge out of Laban's work. One of them is Geraldine Stevenson, who really is one of the first movement directors that we can recognise. She is noted as being a movement director on the York Mystery Plays in 1954, and that's one of the first times I've actually found the words director of movement in relation to chorus work. The other aspect of Central European movement kind of comes from a slightly different angle through the practice of Litzpisk. Litzpisk joined Jewish émigrés coming to Britain pre-war, and she started her work in Britain as a movement teacher and a sculptress. Her kind of great innovation was the idea of using real weight, the idea of the imagination feeding how movement might happen. We come back to a theme which is that it's non-form based. It's being invented out of the necessities of the actor's body. Litzpisk worked both as a movement teacher and as a movement director, and she wove a really interesting career both at the National Theatre, at the Royal Shakespeare Company and in Manchester as well. Her practice was fed into Jane Gibson, Director of Movement here at the National Theatre for about a decade, from around the mid-80s to the mid-90s. And she really did enliven hundreds of pieces of work. At the heart of the French connection are two practitioners, Susan Byng and Jacques Copeau, who, working at the beginning of the 20th century, were really trying to invent a new kind of actor training. What they created between them was chorus work, engagement with mask, mime, using sports and natural gymnastics, a kind of exuberance through acrobatics and breath, and a great emphasis on animal work as well. They taught two students, Michel Saint-Denis, who came over to Britain in the interwar period, and Jacques Lecoq, an inheritor of the Copeau work, directly and indirectly. His training, set up in France, gave birth to many movement directors, and one of them is Claude Chagrin. We had Claude Chagrin working here almost for 10 years non-stop. In 1973, Claude worked on a seminal piece of work, which is Equus. Looking at photos and reading reviews, you see this incredible application of animal work because the horses were obviously played by these incredibly costumed actors. Another aspect of movement directors' lineage is dance, and it's really out of that we get some of our current movement directors, notably Struan Leslie and Kate Flatt. Kate Flatt, who comes from a dance tradition emphasises her ballet training and how her ballet training was, through the agency of Leonid Messine, was able to kind of give her an anatomical aptitude as well as a kind of great capacity to work with music. And it's notable that Kate Flatt does work in theatre but also works a lot in opera. So that route of dance through into movement direction, harnessing aspects of dance for generating actor movement. The rise of what was called physical theatre helped promote and consolidate what movement could be in production. A really beneficial influence on movement direction has been the work of companies such as DV8 and Complicite, where you're getting a very explicitly physical style. We are now working in a truly multi-generational, multicultural environment. Movement direction practices continually dazzle and innovate. I think we're working in a time which is starting to celebrate movement.